Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
I will be making my commitment to the University of Alabama.
Roll Tide, it is the defending national champions.
And with that, we say good evening, everybody. Welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. And tonight, once again, Diet Pepsi Wild Cherry from Pepsi and Buffalo Rock. Love that sound. And you know what I love even more? That taste going down. Well, Rodney, Tua Tagovailoa becomes the first Hawaiian quarterback to commit to the University of Alabama. Not the first Hawaiian player. We might play a little trivia about that later on in the show. It's an unusual move from someone from the islands, but Tagovailoa says the choice for him was actually a pretty easy one.
I also like to thank Coach Nick Saban for giving me the opportunity to have a scholarship to the University of Alabama. The hospitality is kind of like Hawaii, you know. I feel like I'm home over there. Everybody on Sunday goes to church, and that's something big in my life as far as spirituality, and I couldn't ask for anything better.
All right, Rodney, this commitment, Central Time, Alabama time, didn't come until after 11:15 p.m. So there were a lot of tired people at work this morning because a lot of folks in this state stayed up late and got the good news. They were rewarded for it. Now, 2 months ago, this looked like a lock for Southern Cal. In fact, talking to Rob, the sports director there you saw at the television station today on the phone, he told me there was never in anybody's doubt. It was either going to be Oregon initially, and then Oregon didn't show enough interest, and then Southern Cal. They thought the visit to the Southeast they would enjoy it, but not something that was going to change his mind. But after visiting Auburn and Ole Miss, Alabama just blew him away. And I think by the time this commitment happened, everybody on the islands and here in the States knew it was going to be the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, again, you mentioned it. I 2 months ago, if you'd have asked me, I said, this guy's a lock for USC. I know USC is extremely disappointed today with that, with his commitment last night. Alabama's coaching staff, Gary, first of all, they had Jake Fromm committed for a long time, an outstanding quarterback out of the state of Georgia. And then he decommits in early March. Kind of puts Alabama a little bit behind the eight ball because these top quarterbacks, they commit early. They come off the board very, very early. So Alabama had to kind of, I don't want to say scramble, but certainly had to make up some ground. And what a job they did with Tagovailoa. I mean, an outstanding prospect, one of the best in the country, Gary. And there you see his ability to throw the ball, but he's also an outstanding runner. He's a great decision maker. He's a guy that is just a tremendous leader. So to have an opportunity to get a player like this at this point, certainly, I think is going to boost the recruiting class. I think it's going to do a lot in terms of attracting other players.
And it clearly speaks to the reach and the clout of the Alabama program right now. Listen, this fills a need too. I mean, you want to sign a quarterback in every class. Jake Fromm, an outstanding prospect from Warner Robins, Georgia, committed, decommitted, going to Georgia. And, you know, they don't grow these great quarterbacks on trees. And for Alabama to be able to go to Hawaii, of course, Lane Kiffin had a lot to do with it too, I think, and this is a guy he wanted. But for them to get him on campus, and nothing against Auburn and Ole Miss, they made their best pitch too, I'm sure. But clearly, Alabama, in the family's mind, is a cut above everybody else. They said as much. They said they were just blown away. And you mentioned the momentum that you can gain from getting a commitment from a young man like this, but I think just getting a commitment from him tells you where this Alabama program is right now. It can go anywhere.
No, certainly.
It is the program in the country right now.
Yep. And again, going back to what he can do in terms of helping them attract other players, Gary, there's a lot of top wide receivers out there right now that Alabama's been in on. They certainly take note. So it would strengthen Alabama's position with players such as this. There's other skilled people that I think it will help Alabama with. So when you look offensively, Alabama has an opportunity in this class, I think, to sign some of the best skill they've brought in quite some time. They've had some really strong offensive line classes over the last few years. I think they have another opportunity this year to have a really good offensive line class. So I think overall, when you're talking about offensively, this class could be outstanding. Now, again, let's be honest. It's very early. Things can change, but right now it really looks good.
And I know it's a long way until February, but I didn't get the impression at all that this young man is going to be wishy-washy. I think he will indeed sign with Alabama next February. Well, Rodney, let's change gears. it's not all positive for Alabama tonight. It seems like it's been going on for a while, but it was just late last week that we learned that Bo Davis would be resigning from his position as the defensive line coach at Alabama. It indeed happened. And Rodney, you and I don't say that we know him well, but the times we've been around him, we've been very impressed with his straightforwardness. Certainly as a football coach, he's outstanding, had done a terrific job recruiting. This is disappointing for everybody, for Alabama, for Bo Davis, for his family, for the fans. But you know what? We understand that there was some impermissible contact in the dead period with recruits. Bo Davis may not have been as straightforward and honest when questioned about that. I don't know that the university was left with any choice, but it's not a good day for Alabama to lose a coach of this quality.
Well, you mentioned his coaching ability. Certainly, he's a tremendous coach on the field, great recruiter, great talent evaluator. One of the things that I think Bo Davis brought was his the ability to relate to players. He built a brotherhood, a bond on that defensive line. His players loved him. They played extremely hard for him. So, again, I think in all those ways it's a loss, and it's going to be certainly difficult to replace Bo Davis. But there are some other really good coaches out there, and Nick Saban has a track record of really doing an outstanding job when it comes to making a change in terms of hiring a new assistant coach.
Well, let's discuss some of those other really good coaches. One of them that has been mentioned prominently is Carl Dunbar, the former LSU defensive end, was on the strength and conditioning staff at LSU when Coach Saban was the head coach there, went on to become a very successful defensive line coach, first at LSU under Les Miles, also coached with Miles at Oklahoma State, and then in the pros, the last 10 years in the NFL with the Jets, the Bears, most recently the Bills. But you're told that this is not necessarily a done deal. Not so fast, my friend, on Carl Dunbar. Really good coach, but not the lock to be the next defensive line coach at Alabama, the way some reports indicated.
And he may be eventually, but I think right now Alabama will probably take its time and make a determination on which candidate's best for them. There's been some other names mentioned. Tracy Rocker, the current defensive line coach at the University of Georgia, has been mentioned as well. But I think Carl Dunbar's obviously a proven coach in the NFL. He's done an outstanding job. Some of his defensive lines, Gary, for 3 years in a row, they led the NFL in terms of against the run, so he knows how to develop defensive linemen. And I think, too, one of his things is that he is really good at relating to players, building that bond, and was an outstanding player, as you mentioned, at LSU. So I think if it were Carl Dunbar, he certainly would be an excellent choice.
Yeah, the only question on Dunbar, I think, is recruiting. Yeah, he's done it in the past, but 10 years in the pro game, he doesn't have the contacts with the high school coaches the way, say, a Tracy Rocker would. But I think he's an outstanding football coach and great man. If you read some stories about him, personal stories, things that he's done for the community and was involved with the police force there in Louisiana, Carl Dunbar is an excellent coach and person, but there are others that look like they're still in the mix as well. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, 7 Alabama players were drafted in the NFL last week, all of them in the first 3 rounds, but 8 more signed free agent contracts. We'll have the details on every one of them. Plus, Avery Johnson finally has that graduate transfer Alabama's been looking for, a new guard to possibly take the place of Retno Basahan. We'll discuss next. And coming up, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the information on the screen, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us at TITV@WVUA23.com or reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The award-winning Tider Insider TV will return right after this break. The Alabama men's basketball program has finally gotten a graduate transfer for next year. Corbin Collins, second team Ohio Valley last year at Morehead State, averaging 11 points per game, 3 assists, and he shot over 42% from behind the arc. 6'3", 190. He's a physical 2-guard, a lot like Retno Basahan. Collins could be the replacement for Retton. Avery Johnson said Collins fills a need in terms of someone who can really score the basketball. He started his career at LSU, so he's got SEC talent before transferring to Morehead State in 2013. Another possible transfer for the Crimson Tide could be Ohio State senior Daniel Giddens. He averaged a block and a half per game last year in his freshman season with the Buckeyes. Now, he is considered a future NBA prospect. We know Alabama has plenty of future NFL prospects, Rodney, that's for sure. Last week, the Tide sent 15 players onto the NFL roster, starting with the draft, and then 8 more Alabama players signed as undrafted free agents. Let's begin with the draft. The 3 R's were all in Chicago, Ragland, Reed, and Robinson, but none of them went in the first round. It was center Ryan Kelly, who was the first and only first-round pick from Alabama. Number 18 overall, the Colts. The Colts wanted this guy to be their Jeff Saturday version of the modern-day combo with Andrew Luck, the way Saturday and Peyton Manning were for so many years. They like Kelly a lot. I know you like him too. I mean, what is there not to like? Great football player, great student, great character, everything you look for. The Colts love him.
Yeah, all self-made, Gary, when you talk about Ryan Kelly, a guy that came out of high school, was not tremendously highly recruited or anything like that. But, Sal Sinceri saw a lot in him when he recruited him and stuck with him and brought him in here, and he developed himself. He got bigger, stronger, and all of the things that he needed to do. Gary just became a leader and left as a Remington winner and also an All-American.
Kelly going in the first round means that Alabama has had at least one first-rounder every year in the draft since 2009. Now, that's one of the longest streaks in NFL history. Not quite yet approaching what those great Miami teams did, but getting there. Now, Ragland, Reed, Robinson did not go in the first round, but they all went in the second. And, Reggie Ragland goes to the Bills. And this is a guy that, just a football player, Rodney. I think he'll fit in well there with Rex Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, possibly the report of his enlarged aorta may have hurt him a little bit. When you're talking about Reed and Robinson, those two guys, is a really deep defensive line class. So that meant the spots filled up quickly, and those guys weren't necessarily taken maybe when some people thought. And the word was, Gary, that maybe they weren't quite the pass rushers the other guys were, and that might have hurt them.
Well, I think Reed is in a good situation for himself in Seattle. Robinson in Detroit. I think both those guys are going to play early and often. Robinson in particular, Detroit needs help on the defensive line, and he could fill that void. And with Reed, he's going to a Seattle team that's known for being aggressive and nasty, and that's the way Jaron Reed plays. So I think both those guys will fit in well with their new NFL teams. Derrick Henry to the Titans. Love the scheme fit here. But you know what? You've got DeMarco Murray already there at Tennessee. How do you see those two fitting
Well, that'd be a
together?
nice combo. Murray's a veteran-type guy. He can certainly help Derrick Henry with the ropes early on, I think. And, eventually maybe Derrick Henry will become kind of that main back for them. But I think it gives Derrick Henry an opportunity to go in without having to expect to carry the load right off the bat. And I think that's good for him.
Well, we had been hearing that Cyrus Jones was moving up and might be a second or third round pick. It happened. Second round, the defensive back goes to the Patriots and Bill Belichick. What's interesting is I read a couple of the draft blogs up there. New England might look at him as a two-way player. Obviously defense in the kicking game, but also maybe, with Tom Brady, some in the passing game on offense.
Yeah, you look at, he started out here as a wide receiver, as you remember his freshman year, did an outstanding job last year on punt returns. We know how explosive he can be when the ball is in his hands, and I think it was Urban Meyer, Gary, who said that when they recruited him at Ohio State, he kind of thought he had some skills similar to Percy Harvin at Florida that Meyer had recruited there. So, certainly I think this guy, Cyrus Jones, is another one of those guys that some people underestimated him, but, he's a baller.
Final player drafted from Alabama in the third round, Kenyon Drake. You talk about good fits. Miami has been looking for a running back that can take it to distance, a home run threat. That's what Kenyon Drake is.
Yeah, he can do it in so many different ways, too. I mean, he can do it as a runner. He can do it as a receiver. He can do it as a kick returner. So I'm excited to see what Kenyon Drake does, and it was really good to see him go with the 73rd pick overall in the third round because, Gary, he's had to overcome quite a bit. So that's great to see for Kenyon Drake.
And again, it wasn't just the 7 players drafted, a lot of undrafted free agents, 8 of them. You see the list right there. Some potential for all these guys maybe to make rosters, but you see Coker right there at the top of the list. Again, he wanted to be drafted, Rodney. He said that, but Arizona's a good fit. You got Bruce Arians, former Alabama offensive coordinator. You've got Freddie Kitchens on the staff there. A guy in Carson Palmer who's a 36-year-old veteran quarterback. Maybe he makes the practice squad. Maybe he makes the roster. But I think it's a chance for Jake Coker to cash an NFL paycheck. I think this is a good fit for him. Obviously, the Cardinals like him or they wouldn't have signed him.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot like last year. Gary had a lot of doubters. But, he's a guy that has learned to kind of play with a chip on his shoulder. And I think that's the way his approach is in terms of heading into his NFL career. So I think Jake Coker's got a chance.
And look out for Petway and Lee with the Saints. Lee in particular. Special teams, he could be awesome there. All right, coming up next on TITV, we got more for you, including some phone calls, and we're going to get to those right after the break. Again, there's the information on the screen on how you can get in touch with us. So TITV rolling along from Bryant-Denny Stadium inside the Digital Media Center. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to TITV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris, and I bet you know who you are. And I bet you Charles knows who he is in Talladega. He's first up tonight with us here on TITV. Good evening, Charles. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and you?
Very well, sir. What you got?
Yeah, why wasn't Reed, Ragland, Petway, and Henry drafted in the first round?
Okay, Charles, I don't think there was any chance Petway was ever going to be in the first round. I think you meant Robinson. Henry, I think he probably went about where he was pegged in the second round. I thought there was a chance a team might bite on him at the latter part of the first round, so they had that extra option for a fifth year. But in Reed, Ragland, and Robinson's case, Rodney touched on it a little bit. I just think it's the way the draft fell. A lot of defensive linemen in this draft, and in Ragland's case, the large aorta. Some people might have been concerned about that. But, I'll say this. They're losing some money initially, sure, but they're going to make the team. Second round still a really good place to be drafted. And I think all three of those guys are going to be really good football players. Derrick Henry, too. That's all that matters going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cyrus Jones as well. I mean, you had 6 players go in the top 60.
Yeah.
Some fans are kind of upset about not as many in the first round, but when you're talking about 6 going in the top 6, that's pretty good.
It worked out for Seattle. I thought they might grab Reed at the latter part of the first round. They went with the offensive tackle from A&M instead, but they still moved up and got him in the second round, and I think it worked out. I think all three of those guys are with good fits. Reed in Seattle, Robinson in Detroit, and Ragland in Buffalo, and, of course, Derrick Henry in Tennessee. All right, let's go to BT. BT, what's up, my friend?
What's up, Gary Harris and Rodney Orr?
You know it. What you got for us?
What I want to ask is, who's going to be able to replace Coleman and Kentry on the team?
Sure, BT. Well, Coleman and Kesson's both deciding to leave Alabama and transfer out. Kesson's not much of a scorer. I think they feel like they're going to have some inside people that can make up for his loss, and I think they think Dante Hall is going to take a big step this year as a sophomore. As far as Coleman is concerned, Dazon Ingram will be back, coming off that broken foot. And, he's going to be their starting point guard. They're bringing in, as we mentioned, Collins from Morehead State. So I think they feel like they'll be able to replace those two guys on the roster next year. Let's go to Birmingham and talk to Ron. Ron, welcome into TITV.
Hey, boys, how y'all doing?
Doing well, Ron.
I have a question. I know the guys that got drafted are guaranteed money. What about the guys that got a free agent contract? Are they guaranteed anything?
They're guaranteed a signing bonus, and that's it, from what I understand, Ron. You get a signing bonus when you sign. They're not guaranteed anything after that. Now, when they come in, you are paid a stipend while you're on the expanded roster. Certainly, then if you make the 53-man roster, you're on the regular team, or if you make a practice roster, you're guaranteed money. But let's be clear on this. I said I think those guys have a chance to make a team, and I do. But the odds are long. When you're an unrestricted free agent, those guys that are drafted, guys that are returning, you're going to have to prove yourself in a lot of different ways. But we see it every year, Rodney. Guys make it. They get to keep that signing bonus money. But if they're going to earn more money going forward, they're going to have to make the squad either as a practice player or a regular member of the 53-man roster.
No question. So
that's the challenge. And but you want an opportunity, and 8 of those guys have opportunities. All right, tell you what, we're just getting cranked up good here on TITV. We're going to be back with more phone calls and emails and tweets, too, using the hashtag TITV. So stick with us. We'll be back with more TITV right after this. Former Bama golfer Bobby Wyatt made the most of his opportunity at the rain-shortened Zurich Classic of New Orleans, playing on a sponsor's exemption in just his 9th career start on the PGA Tour. He fired an 8 under 64 to finish alone in 4th place at the TPC Louisiana course. One shot out of a 3-way playoff that was eventually won by Brian Stewart. He earned $336,000 for his 4th place finish and a spot in next week's PGA Tour event. Way to go, Bobby. All right, let's get right back to the phones. Rodney, you ready to take some more phone calls? And let's get to the phone lines and talk with Bama Jack in Northport. Bama Jack, how are you?
Hey, Gary, Rodney, I tried last week and y'all run off on me. But my question is, what do y'all think? Don't y'all think the NCAA should put a cap on when a guy should commit to university, especially in light of that 15-year-old committed a couple of weeks ago? And also, what's the possibility of Jim Harbaugh having a camp in Hawaii now that we got that recruit out of there? I'll hang up and listen.
All right, on the commitment thing, Bama Jack, you have to take it with a grain of salt. I agree with you, but I don't think there's anything the NCAA can do to legislate that. I mean, if a kid's 10 years old and wants to say he's committed to a school, he can do it.
Yep.
I see where you're going with that, but you just take it with a grain of salt. These college coaches know if somebody commits at 15 years of age, there's going to be a lot that changes, but it doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these coaches don't take those early commitments real seriously, Gary. I mean, because of all the flipping and all the changing, and we see them all the time. Guys that even recruit this year will probably commit this year who are going to be seniors.
Yeah.
You see a lot of that flipping going on right now. So, again, I don't think it's taken too seriously, and I agree with you. I don't think there's any way you can really legislate that. Now, there has been some talk about having an early signing day where guys, once they make up their mind that they're going in their senior years, could have an opportunity to sign and get it out of the way. That's something that's been talked about, and I think that would probably be a positive for some of these guys. But then you would have to deal with, what if there's a coaching change? They would have to be allowed to get out of that.
All right, let's try to get to Gerald in Cottondale real quickly. Gerald, how are you?
Doing pretty good, Gary. How y'all doing?
Good. Go ahead, my friend.
Well, I just wanted to ask y'all what you thought about Alabama baseball team. I've been following pretty good this year. They look like they're on the verge of having a good team, but I just can't get over the hump for some reason.
Yeah, they can't get over the hump because they can't score enough runs, Gerald. Pitching's been fine. I mean, they've had pitching that's as good as anybody in the SEC. A lot of pressure on your defense and your pitching, though, when you can't score runs. And, they've lost too many 3-2, 2-1, 4-3 type ball games. Score more runs, they're going to win more games. Hey, thanks for the phone calls. Still to come here, we've got more on TITV, and we're going to be back to wrap up the show right after this, so stay with us. The locker room is a Tuscaloosa tradition in men's clothing since 1964. Get by to get you some original elephant wear or shop online. Good night.